really feel like this, hey, but I feel for you. I feel for you.
Good evening, folks. My name is Charles Madden, but known around the inner city of Sydney as Chicka. Now, that's a nickname that I got many, many years ago, going to Redfern Public School, which is now NCIE, the National Centre of Indigenous Excellence. Folks, I'm from Gadigal land. Aboriginal land, that's the land we're on at the moment. For many, many years, I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I've been involved with many different Aboriginal organisations over the years. I've been a director with the Aboriginal Medical Service at Redfern for over 40 years. Also a director with the Redfern Aboriginal Housing Company, Aboriginal Hostels Australia, and the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. I've got to mention it, folks. Also a life member of the Redfern All Blacks Rugby League Football Club. Yay. Folks, for many, many years I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I'd like to take this opportunity this evening to extend a warm and sincere welcome to all of my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters. If we have any brothers and sisters from the Torres Strait or further afar across the seas, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. The Gadigal clan is one of 29 that makes up the Eora Nation. The Eora Nation is bordered by 3 distinctive landmarks. We have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Peen to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Those 3 rivers form the boundaries of the Eora Nation. Folks, if you've travelled across this great city of ours today, welcome. Enjoy your stay. Have a safe and trouble-free trip home. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Uncle Chicka for welcoming us to country. We're very lucky to be sharing this land right now, where for thousands of years, generations of Gadigal peoples have been sharing knowledge, stories, and song. As we'll be sharing knowledge, stories, and song today as well. We're very privileged to be doing so today as well. This is Trax. Welcome. Hey. Trax. We are back in 2020 and live with you, obviously, digitally through the live stream, so hello. Today, we are talking how to get your music heard. And we're with you for an hour, so we'll kick off with some quick intros. From my left to my right, we have Amelia Jenner, Aniela Swiatek, Latukefu, and Ziggy Ramo. We'll get them to talk about a bit about what they do in a bit. I'll start. I'm Darren Lesaguis, and I'll be facilitating the panel today. I'm a broadcaster at FBI Radio. I host 2 shows, Wednesday Arvos, and I co-host Race Matters as well. I also work at Remote Control Records. It's an indie Australian label where we've worked on some artists locally, including Methyl Ethel, Sui Shen, and Courtney Barnett. Internationally, we work with FK Twigs, Yeji, Arca, and a few more. And yeah, that's me. I'll be facilitating this panel, and we'll go from left to right, starting from Amelia Jenner.
Nice. Hello, I'm Amelia. I'm the music and program director at FBI Radio. And so that kind of means that I look after all the music that you hear on the station every week, every day. It involves listening to all the different music submissions that come through, deciding what gets played, on which shows and that sort of thing, organising interviews and premieres, basically anything music related on FBI. It's me and a really amazing team of volunteers that look after all that. FBI, for those, I mean, I'm kind of guessing people tuning in that know a little bit about FBI, but we're a community broadcaster in Redfern, where our stations are based. We broadcast all over Sydney, Greater Sydney, so nearly to the top of the Blue Mountains, nearly to Newcastle, nearly to Wollongong, so a pretty big scope, and we broadcast to nearly 500,000 unique listeners per month, so it's pretty big reach that we have, and everything that we do is of interest to young people, so between the ages of sort of 15 to 24 is our primary demographic, and then sort of closely followed by 25 to 35. So everything we do on the station has to be of interest to young people from Sydney, basically.
Thanks, Amelia. Aniela?
Yeah. I'm Aniela. I'm the head of PR and comms at Thinking Loud, which is a little music agency based in Sydney. I've been there for about 4 years now, and previous to that I was working in labels. So I've been, I think, working in music now for maybe 10 or so years. But I guess of the most interest for you guys would be the artists that we work with. So we have worked with and still work with like Sampa the Great and Remy, Genesis Owusu, Kait. We've got Flight Facilities, Hayden James. So primarily in the kind of electronic and hip hop space. There's another part of our business that does music strategy for brands as well, but that is probably not as interesting for everyone. And that's it.
Thanks, Aniela. How?
How you doing? My name is Hao Latukefu. Born to Tongan parents, born in Canberra. Radio presenter on Triple J. I present the Triple J Hip Hop Show Thursday evenings. Friday evenings, I do a show called Sky High on Double J. I have a record label through Sony imprint titled Forever Ever Records. A mentor, but above all that, father, husband, son, brother, and friend, and just a fan of music. Thank you.
Ziggy?
Hello, I am Ziggy Ramo. I'd also just like to say thank you to Chica. That was, I always think it's really important to like take a moment to understand that we've just been welcomed on to country from people that have given so much for us to be here. I'm Indigenous, but this is not my country, so I'd also just like to take a moment to acknowledge that, that this is stolen land, sovereignty was never ceded. So the fact that we have people who are so welcoming to this day it is always, I think, a surreal experience. So thank you so much, Chica. I'm an artist. I talk a lot of crap. I rant a lot, basically, as you're probably going to find out. I'm an independent artist. I've been independent my entire career. I make music and try and get my music heard.
Welcome to the panel.
Yeah,
Welcome to this panel. Welcome. Thanks for introducing yourself, guys. So we'll dive right in. This idea of being heard, or this idea of quote-unquote breaking through. There are many ways to think about what these terms can mean, and depending on who you are as an artist or who you are in the industry. What are some of those ways? I'll open that to everyone because it's quite broad.
It is quite broad.
Maybe we'll go from a PR perspective.
Yeah. Sure. I suppose, I'm trying to think where to start. I suppose in terms of publicity, the way that any publicist or Thinking Loud or whoever can help you is, I guess you're kind of looking at someone and leaning on their relationships within radio, with online, within press as well. And our job is literally just to facilitate your music getting to more people. So I think like we're lucky with the artists that we work with that, I mean, I'm again obviously really biased, but the songs are so strong that it doesn't really take too much. It's like we're just so lucky to be able to help put that out into the world. And I think probably for most artists, the most important thing that we seem to come up with is radio. I think that seems to be the kind of key avenue, primarily because you can also get money back from actually being played on radio. Does that help start it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think Australia is really lucky in our radio. Maybe I'm biased as well, but nowhere in the world has anything like Triple J.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the world has such a strong community radio network like Australia does. And that means there are so many avenues for Australian artists to get their music heard. Like, the Australian radio scene is the envy of the rest of the world. Like, the US has their college radio, but it's just such a big cluster to try and work your way through. And then from that is basically commercial radio. And then the UK has kind of like the BBC, which is kind of similar to the ABC, but it's not accessible in the same way that Australian radio is. So I think radio does seem like a really important aspect for a lot of local artists, because it is this thing that is quite attainable. And on the other end of those emails are just people, like they're not automated responders and that kind of thing. So in that sense, I think getting your music heard through that platform is quite easy, which is the best thing in the world.
On that idea of a person being on the other end of a receiving email, which is you, if someone were to pitch their music to you, what would you want to see? What are you expecting?
I'm not expecting anything really. I think pitches can come in all shapes and forms. I think one thing that's really important to know is because submitting music to radio is quite easy, that means there is an overwhelming amount of stuff that's coming through. So I think if you can make your pitch as simple and straight to the point as possible, it makes it a lot easier for the other person on the end to go, I know exactly what this is, I know exactly where this has got to go. And it'll stop like back and forth between you and the program director or whatever. It'll mean that your music could be on the radio the next day. So I think the best thing for me is just like a link so that I can listen to the music, a link so I can download it. Sometimes that link is the same thing. You can put a little bit of info about yourself so you can get a bit of a picture of who you are as an artist. Doesn't need to be much, just like where you're from, what you're trying to say in your music. Just basic. A photo if you want, don't have to. Socials if you want, so you can find a bit about it. But the main thing is just make it easy to listen to the song that you're submitting or the album.
What about easy, like as a
Please. Let's go.
As an independent artist, what do you feel like are the main obstacles of getting your music heard?
I think it's understanding there's a difference between making music and the music business. A lot of people who make music do it because they love it, but it's a completely different thing to then introduce commerce into that. You know, like there's a fine line between commerce and art and trying to find that middle ground. So I think, you know, for me as an independent artist, like I still think I'm trying to break through, like to where I want to get to. But for me, because I'm as independent as it gets, you know, I've been self-managed since 2018. I'm independent. I've just started recently working with management. I've been working with press, Janelle at Morse Code. I've been working with her for years. It's kind of like trying to find those people who get you, because if you do work with like press, for example, if they know who you are, when they're sending an email to you, they can represent your voice very clearly, because the music business has a lot of people talking about you. So if you don't have people who understand who you are, then a lot gets lost in translation. So I think it's really, it's just time. It's just time to find the right people.
And that team is important. Like, and that could take years, I think. But it's important to have that, like you were saying, that collective of people that understand what you're trying, the message you're trying to convey, the sound that you're trying to create, and I guess the demographic you're trying to
Would you vouch for doing it yourself first before reaching out to others around you?
Yeah, definitely. You know, because only you truly know what you want. And like, if you don't know what you want, how are you going to tell someone else what you're trying to do? And you know, I guess, you know, you were talking about PR. I get a lot of questions like, oh, when should we get PR, or when should I get a manager? And I always feel like, well, you won't. The music is the focus. If there's no music, there's nothing to put like for them to do anything anyway. So you just got to really focus on the music and make sure you feel like you're in a good spot, and then start reaching out to people. And it's a lot of trial and error. You know?
Oh, big time. You know, I had a manager who was great for whatever reason it didn't work out. I became self-managed for 2 years and had met a bunch of different people, but it wasn't until an intro got me to people that I felt safe with, and then we've been trialing for like the last 2 months, and now you never know how you're going to work with someone until you work with them. You know, like it's
a total different relationship when you just see him at gigs.
Yeah.
But then when you actually work, you're like, oh, I don't really click with this guy after all.
Fully. I have a lot of independent artists hitting me up for like permission to submit their music, which I find quite interesting. Or a lot of people when we do music open days where people can come in and talk face to face.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, they're like, oh, do I need a publicist or do I need a manager to kind of be involved in this? And the answer is definitely no. Like, if you're ready to take that first step in getting your music heard, like just, doing it yourself is completely valid. And a lot of people don't need a PR, which like does cost money, and a manager 100%. Does take a portion of your earnings and that sort of thing. So there's definitely benefits to doing it yourself as well. And like you said, you know yourself better than other people do. Yeah,
and I think you brought up something that's quite important too, that this industry is quite small and everyone is kind of accessible. Like you said, like you'll meet someone, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. And you know, and I think it's just about asking a lot of questions and obviously being tactful about it, you know. And I guess it's just throwing yourself in there, and it is scary. You know, it can be daunting and overwhelming for a lot of art, especially, you know, as everyone would know, like there's certain creatives that outside of the studio, they you know, it's hard for them to kind of express themselves and even just to approach people to talk.
Yeah, I actually agree. I feel like there's a lot to vouch for this idea of doing it yourself, in that I feel like, from my experience, really successful artists have started by treating their music as community building, reaching out to their audiences, establishing that relationship. And that doesn't necessarily mean people who go to their gigs, but, you know, people who host shows on community radio, you know, myself included. I go to gigs, well, I went to gigs all the time and hope to again in the future. But yeah, like the closest you'll get to a local emerging artist is like the fan, the community radio listener, and the community radio presenter, and they are more accessible than you think.
And I think also, you know, we talk a lot about what artists need to do. I think as presenters and people in the industry, we have a certain responsibility as well. Like you mentioned going to shows, and I feel, I mean, I love going to shows anyway, but I also feel like if I'm going to be presenting the hip-hop show, I need to be out there, showing my face, and people, oh, no, he's still about it, you know, I see him all the time. And it gives them opportunity as well, seeing you in, I guess, a non-threatening or non-overwhelming environment, you know, like a gig. I mean, you don't always want to be talking about work at a gig. You know, it kind of makes people feel a bit more at ease approaching you, as opposed to setting up a meeting, going to the station.
And it establishes a connection that you wouldn't get from an MP3 download in an email. It's a whole other face of the artist. So we're on community radio, and obviously we're broadcasting from Sydney, and Tracks is FBI radio led. For people who are wanting to pitch their music at FBI and are listening to FBI maybe for the first time and hearing the playlist, how does the playlist work? Now, I know there's an idea of a rotation. What are the rotations?
So not all community radio stations have a playlist. FBI, I think, is a bit more similar to Triple J in that sense. A lot of community radio stations kind of have like a select bunch of records that they play throughout the week, and presenters can kind of pick and choose from that. Where at FBI we have a playlist, which means it's a playlist of songs made up of about 160, 170 songs. And every week we're adding about 25 new songs to that playlist and taking off 25 old songs. So it's always refreshing every week. And we have 3 levels of rotation. We have A, which gets played maybe once or twice a day, and that's kind of like 5 or 6 songs in that playlist at any one time. And then we have B, which is kind of like once a day for about 2 or 3 months. and that's the bulk of the playlist. And then we have C, which is a couple of times a week for about 2 months. So there's kind of varying levels and things move between them and that sort of thing. And then we have Album of the Week, which is like the feature record of that week. So every week my role involves listening to all the music that's come through in the last 7 days and kind of sifting through it and working out what's best for the playlist for that week and taking it to a music team, and then we all listen to it and then we all kind of work it out. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle, and it's not necessarily the best 25 tracks of the week, even though, yes, they are the best tracks, but it's not just there's lots that we're thinking about. There's 50% of what we add has to be from Australia, 25 of that is from Sydney, 50% of what we're adding is by BIPOC artists, 25% of that is by women of colour, and then we're also thinking about music from different parts of the world, so not just the dominant music places like America or Australia and the UK, so we're thinking about all different parts of the world where music is coming from, and just basically representing a whole bunch of different voices through music, because I think music is really powerful in that it can tell so many different stories. So it's a big jigsaw puzzle every week, basically.
Yeah.
But I should also say that being on the playlist isn't the be-all and end-all. And if your first track doesn't get on playlist, it doesn't mean that your second track or your third track won't. It's just, there's so many other avenues as well.
Yeah, and I guess this goes back to the idea of what it means to be heard. I feel like maybe for people who are new to the industry, they have somehow set these goals that they're measuring their success for, be it rotation on FBI, rotation on Triple J, playlisting on digital services. But these are all goals that will be different for every artist. And I guess what we're trying to do is demystify this idea of success, because it's not going to look the same for everyone, and you may not want that element of success. Ziggy, when you were starting out, how close were what you were achieving to what you were achieving for Match?
Nowhere near.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like, so I think like a really interesting thing about like doing it yourself and being independent, I think a really positive thing about doing that is when you do get to a place of expanding your team, you understand what they're going to do. You understand like what they're going to take off your plate, like, and you understand what's happening. So you see this money leaving your bank account, because as an independent artist, that's your money going out, and you understand the value that's being added. And so for me, like the goals that I had set and I still have set are very ambitious. I'm super crazy, super delusional, will always be. But I think as I've gotten a little bit older and, this is my job, I've kind of started to understand that if your primary motivation are goals, the goalposts are always moving, because as, your first goal could be, I want to get onto a playlisting for FBI. When you get it, by the time you've achieved it, you're already past that point. So if your only fulfillment within your art is through achieving goals, you're never going to be fulfilled with your art. So I think as an artist, it's really important to understand your why. Why are you creating? And if it's solely, goal-based, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think one thing you kind of start to understand is it kind of has to be more than that, because your goalposts are always moving. Because, you get to a point where those things become normalized, like I've been played on FBI, or I've been played on Triple J, so like now what's next? The goalposts are always moving. So, yeah, I think understanding why you do it will keep you motivated forever.
That also comes through when you're pitching your music. Like if you have a good reason behind why you're doing what you're doing, that will show through in your music and people will connect to it a lot better, I feel.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that passion is going to drive you through all those dark days.
Yeah.
Because you get so many no's, right?
Yeah.
You're going to get so many no's.
Yeah.
We have a question from the live stream. We are live streaming. If you've just tuned in, this is Tracks. We're talking about how to get your music heard. We have an amazing panel here, as you can see. I'm trying to read this question, but I can't really read it. I think okay, cool. Hey, Simon, thank you for watching. Simon is asking, if you want to go really the independent route by putting out your own music on your own label as a sole trader, should you treat it as two separate entities, i.e. one ABN for your music and another for the label itself?
So this is a great question. Initially, when you're starting out and you have to start invoicing, you need an ABN. So the kind of easiest thing to do is a sole trader, and also because of tax purposes. Like when you first start, you're probably not going to be making so much that it is worth investing the amount to register as like a limited company. So when you first start, like I started as a sole trader and I've been at it for kind of professionally now for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and only now have I transitioned to a limited company. So like if you are going full independent, I think starting at a sole trader, I don't think you necessarily need 2 entities because it covers everything, you know, like you can invoice with that one ABN. So it's just kind of like you're going to have double the amount of bookkeeping if you register 2 ABNs. And honestly, as an independent artist, you want to streamline everything. Yeah. One thing I would say though, if you are going full independent, like I wish I had have known like more about taxes when I started, you know, like if you're traveling and it's for work, like keep a travel diary because you can claim that back on tax. Like honestly, like
you can claim anything on tax.
Tell you that.
Yeah, like it's hard because you start as a passion and it's fun with friends and you're in the garage and, you know, so thinking about that is difficult. But honestly, like book a consultation with H&R Block or anyone, like even if they're not music specific, like getting interested in the business side of things, if you want to go the independent route, is so important.
And as a person that works in entertainment, you can claim any entertainment things like movie tickets, magazine subscriptions.
What?
Yeah. This is why you need an accountant.
Do you have a name for a good accountant?
I do, actually.
Okay, cool. We'll put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments.
Yeah, if you are tuning in, please feel free to put any questions in the comments below.
That was a long-winded way of saying you need one ABN.
I think if you don't have any employees or anything, you're still just classified as a sole trader, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How you host the long-running hip-hop show on Triple J. What are you looking for in regards to local talent in your show?
There's a lot of things, like Amelia was pointing out, you know, it's not, you don't necessarily base songs on, because they're the hottest song. You know, there's different variations, you know, a lot of times I'm looking at impact, cultural impact, you know, and that can come few far between, but when they come, and you gotta just be there to support. But you know, it's just usually, it's hard too because there has to be a certain sound quality, like sonically, to go on radio as well, which I kind of don't necessarily like because I know there's a lot of bedroom.
Oh, you mean like recording wise?
Yeah, sonic wise, and I know there's a lot of bedroom artists that don't necessarily have the gear, but they have the idea and the sound. And so that's something that I kind of tell people as well. Like, you know, there has to be a certain standard of the sound. But in terms of like content and like style, it varies. You know, I feel I have a broad taste in hip hop. You know, and you know, I'm from like the '80s era, but I love what's coming out today as well. So I feel like I'm in a good position to be able to play things that I feel need to be played and need to be represented, and I won't play something that I don't like. Which kind
Fair enough, yeah.
No, I mean it kind of sounds like, oh, you know, he's trying to play God with this, but I kind of feel like it's giving it a kind of, again, it's giving it a standard. You know, can't just be playing everything because there's everything there. You know, there has to be a certain standard to it. So when people hear it, okay, like how's playing it? So he's obviously backing it, and he feels passionately about it. And like you pointed out, you know, sometimes it won't be the first song or the second song, and you know, I'm never one to be like, I don't like that artist, so I won't play anything.
Yeah.
It's a song by song basis.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the most important thing is being genuine and authentic.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in the music when they're being authentic and being themselves. You know, that's important.
You mentioned artists who have a significant cultural impact. Who are some artists that you've noticed have been having that in the past little while?
Man, people Riggs, obviously, and just seeing him evolve from like the larrikin kid from Shepparton to someone that is writing scripts and writing books and musician, activist, and you know, artists like that, very few and far between, like I said before. And I think he's made a big impact. Someone like Sampa, you know, like we were quick to claim her as Australian. You know? She's Australian. You know, people like her, and you know, and even recently, like 1/4. You know, there's been those moments where I think they're prime examples of they don't necessarily have to get these radio plays. But their impact is so strong, and their personalities are so strong, and what they represent is so strong. It just breaks through. And when they do, we, as radio presenters, I feel we have to really get behind.
Yeah.
Just adding to with pretty much our job, I would say, around Sampa's album campaign last year was literally helping rewrite the narrative that she's not Australian. That was essentially what we were. That was the goal, because it was becoming quite ridiculous how much people were claiming her here, and it's amazing. It's not to take away where her career started, but. I mean, that is the entire content of the record, and that is, even though I completely agree that PR is not always the way for everyone, and particularly when you're emerging, but I think that sometimes we can help facilitate it more so that it becomes clearer what people's narratives are and stories, and
say we're an emerging artist and we're trying our best to, make those first steps into getting our music heard. Community radio seems like the obvious place to start. But again, as you were saying, you set these goals, you reach them, and then you notice there's another one coming. In some cases, maybe that first goal may not be met ever. How do you readjust, or how do you re-strategize when you're not finding the success in putting your music out as you had expected in the first place, from a PR perspective? Aniela?
I think it's continuously, like, we have some artists we work with are very, I guess, want us to play a particular role, and it's not really involved in the strategy too much. But I think that we work best when we do feel like an extension as part of the team. So we're consistently having conversations with managers, with the artists themselves. And that's kind of why we're there, is to help reset. And we're also very transparent. I think publicists can have a lot of fluff and a lot of hot air. And
to be honest, man, like press releases, I can't remember
totally.
the last time I read them.
Me either.
Delete.
Save the trees now.
So for us, it's like we're always very honest if things aren't working out the way that someone would hope, and it's just like, I think between the team and myself, we have enough experience to constantly come up with new ideas as well, and go, okay, cool, well, that route might not be working, but here are some other alternatives. And there's so many as well. And I can't tell you how so many people we work with, it's so consistently about a Triple J conversation, and I'm not denying the importance of that, because obviously...
I have that conversation a lot too.
Yeah, but it's just, there's so many other avenues as well. There's so many other things.
Nowadays, people I often talk about Cursor, the success he's had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a prime example. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously I love Triple J. I work there and I
Yeah.
love the people, but I always tell people like that's not the be all
No.
and end all.
Yeah.
There's other avenues and DSPs and
Yeah.
there's so much resources at within grasp that. But I do understand also that's to be on FBI or Triple J is like a sense of achievement. Like you said, it's a goal.
And it's the
like,
flow-on
tick the
effect
box.
that helps when it helps artists get shows. It helps.
Yeah.
There's so
Yeah.
much, of course, like not taking away from the importance, but I guess it's just we try really hard not to make entire strategies around that.
Just too many bubbles.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the moment that the Triple J ad or whatever it is doesn't happen, then your whole campaign
Yeah.
goes
Yeah,
out the window,
and that's
right?
not-
And Triple J don't want you to base
No,
a campaign.
No. Oh, I wouldn't
around-
imagine. Speaking for them.
But you know what I mean? Like, they want to see you as an artist doing your thing,
Yeah.
and Triple J is just
Totally.
an added bonus,
Yeah.
a really good added bonus.
Yeah.
We can't deny that in the past few months, the face of releasing music, touring has changed, maybe forever, but definitely for now. What are some new ways that you're seeing artists connect with their fans beyond releasing new music or touring?
Well, live streaming,
Yeah.
that's popped off. I mean, like, we all went from having no idea how to live stream to being experts.
Yeah,
in, like,
look at us doing this. Killing it.
But yeah, live streaming's been cool. It's been a fun way to like get a little insight into people's like lives and their homes and those kind of things, and like that pop up nightclubs and stuff on
Yeah.
Twitch, and like, cool. That's great. I guess there's like lots of people are finding cool, interesting ways to record music at home, and like giving themselves these isolation has created these boundaries for people, so they're using that in cool ways, which I've found fun. Like, there was that big compilation record, was it called Songs for the Great Indoors?
Oh yeah, from
And
Dinosaur
all the
City
songs
Records.
were like produced in the last 6 weeks, and they put together this huge compilation, and it was really cute, and all the money raised went back to like supporting the musicians, and I think it's been really nice to see the way people are like coming together as communities and slowing down a bit, and finding ways to maybe connect deeper with music. I know like a lot of people have been able to sit with albums a lot more. So I think on a listener side of things, now is a really cool time to be releasing music because people have the time to connect.
I even had like someone hit me up saying it was the first time they listened to my show since like 5 years.
Because they're always out at the time that your show's on.
They don't have to necessarily get up early the next day, so they're like, oh, I'll check it out.
Did they like it?
Hey?
Did they like the show?
No, I didn't read that far. But it's awesome. And I don't know, like, what about you, Ziggy? Have you felt like this was the best time to release? Because you obviously released the album.
Yeah, I just put out an album with no strategy. Don't listen to anything I say. No, for me, I had scheduled another single to come out. That was kind of, I'd made a video at home in quarantine. I thought it was super dope. I was super happy about it. And then May 25th happened with George Floyd. And I noticed our country was very ready to point a finger at what was going on in America. And obviously, we stand in solidarity with what's happening there. But I just we are very good at sitting on a high horse. And I just thought, there's, I have a lived experience in this country. And what is happening in America, it's manifested in a different way, but it happens here. And I had this album that I wrote 5 years ago that when I was very much a young artist, meeting with different people in the industry, different execs, different people. I did like a showcase at Big Sound. A lot of feedback I got was like, why are you so angry? Or, what are you, and so...
It's a lucky country.
Yeah, oh my
as
God.
a young artist, when you hear that, you're very impressionable. And if you don't feel like supported, I think it's very easy to be influenced, And so I think for me, with this time, and being the joy of being an independent artist, if you get a gut feeling and you're like, you know what, this album, like this is the best way I can use my voice. That was on Wednesday. My album was out on Saturday. Obviously, I'm very lucky and I've built a lot of amazing relationships, and I was able to lean on Spotify. I was able to lean on people at TuneCore, but it's like you do that by building relationships. And then it's like now I'll look back and know, like when I wanted to use my voice, I was able to. You know, I didn't have to ask for permission. I didn't, you know, and I think that's where it comes back to authenticity, right? It's like, why are you doing it? For me, I want to advocate for our community. I want to have a seat at the table. I want more Indigenous voices to be heard. So do I back that up? And as an independent artist, I was able to trust my gut and do that. And I'm not saying you can't do that if you're on a label or whatever, but for myself within the industry, I'd never really felt like I'd found a space. So for me, it's about carving your own out and just being authentic to who you are.
That's amazing. Sorry, I'm just like taking it in. How about you guys? Are you seeing any other instances of people carving out their own space in the industry or the wider community?
I mean, I feel like 1-4 is a pretty good example. We've already spoken about them a tiny bit, but they're kind of just absolutely unapologetically doing their thing and the world is listening. You know, like, people have probably, I mean, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but people have probably told them to, like, tone it down or not be so angry, but they're just doing their thing, and it's took media a while to catch up to see that, like, they're a good example of, and Cursor as well is like the perfect example of like your fan base being there first and foremost, and other things catch up later.
Yeah, the refreshing thing working with 1-4 early was, you know, you'd have discussions like, what do you want to do? Like, and working at Triple J, a lot of the times you hear young artists say, oh, I want to have a Triple J rotation, I want to play certain festivals, and they didn't want any of that because maybe they didn't think about it and it wasn't in the scope, but that was refreshing, and I would talk about this festival that they was going to play, and they're like, oh, okay, oh, what's a festival? And, you know, for me, it was like, I was mad that people they had other goals. You know, it wasn't always about playing the major festivals or getting high rotation on certain radio stations. And that's refreshing, and I kind of feel like during this period, a lot of people are kind of seeing that for themselves, you know, because they have the time now to think outside of the box and think creatively and figuring out, oh, so I don't have to do this or do that. And it's definitely that kind of entrepreneurial kind of attitude that, you know, that you're starting to see a little bit. You know, we were talking about it, you know, off camera about building. And yeah, just if this feels like this is the time to, I mean, obviously everything's shut down, but now you're like, okay, what can we do from here?
We have a question from Facebook. If you are just tuning in, welcome to Tracks. We're talking how to get your music heard. Thank you and hello to Strictly DT.
DT,
you ask, what are one of your biggest lessons you've learned in the music industry? Who wants to start with that?
Again, we were talking off air about, and then you just mentioned it before about like gut feeling.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut, you know. And I always tell people, it's like, you know, if you lead with like good heart, good intention, you'll never lose. You may not get the wins, but you will never lose. You know, you want to be able to look back in 20, 30 years and be like, okay, cool, that song didn't pop off like I thought, but it's what I was feeling at that time, and I still stand by that song, you know. And I think gut feeling is such a primal kind of reaction, and people talk about it a lot, and there's a reason why we're still talking about it centuries later, because it's true.
I think know your why. Know your why is really important, which is, I guess, a more convoluted way to say trust your gut. But, you know, if you know why you want to do something, and beyond getting a playlist, beyond getting a festival, like, You know, and I'm not saying every artist has to want to change the world. Like, maybe they just want to make the best music they can. But, like, knowing why you're creating or why you work in PR or why you know, like, if you know your why, then I think you're always going to, like, you're always going to have somewhere to return to, right? Like, because there is so much fluff in the industry. There's so much, like, you know, like, as an artist, right, we have a whole industry built around convincing that we need other people. Where the truth is, like, if your music is good, like, invest in your music. Actually, that's my advice. Invest in your music, like, 100%. Like Hal said, like, there's a certain quality that you need to achieve before you can get into certain radios or whatever. So, like, if you're making...
Maybe, like, the streaming, it has to be a certain quality for ingesting it,
So I'd always say invest in your music. Like, your music is the most important thing, because after you die, it's still going to be here. So, like, that's...
Immortalized through music.
Yeah. It's interesting that there's this whole, like, commercial industry that's set up around an art form. And, like, you know, and that sometimes, unfortunately, takes away from the actual art. That
turns it into a real job.
Yeah, and, like, sometimes that it makes it a slog and it's not fun anymore. I think coming back to your why and, like, focusing on your craft, and then the other people will come to it when they're ready. You know, they can catch up.
What does that look like? Asking the question why, what does that look like for someone working on the other side of the artist, for someone like at the label or on a management team? Aniela, maybe you.
Maybe you.
Yeah.
As in, what does the... What, reminding myself why. Why. Yeah, I think for me, I definitely fell into doing PR. So I probably do have to remind myself why quite often.
Why am I doing this?
Especially working at
If everyone's here for my existential chat. But I fell into doing it, and then I knew I just wanted to work in music so much, and I didn't do music. I didn't feel that particularly creative, so I was trying to find other ways to do it. And then now I think, like, I was so lucky to work at the labels that I did, and I learnt so much there. But moving over to Thinking Loud and the artists, like, literally the founder of Thinking Loud had signed Remy just as I'd started. And I had been such a big fan of those guys for so long. And so that was a real joy, like, coming on and thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have to just work on, like, EDM, which is what I'd been doing before. I get to work in hip hop, which is what I'd grown up loving and so much. And then they were the first artists that opened up so many other artists that we get to work with now. And it never crosses my head that I do PR now. I'm just like, I would naturally want to talk about these people all the time. Every single thing they put out, I'm just in awe of. Obviously, over the years, we have a few that I'm like, maybe not that one anymore. So I think for me, this is only my own personal experience, but it's just loving and admiring music so much. So it's very easy to do it.
We have a question from Donnie Janks on Facebook. Thank you, Johnny. Donnie asks, how do you go about building relationships? Sorry, Donnie.
Yeah, I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
I always say, I mean, it's hard now, but just getting out there. You know, go to panels, go to gigs, go to workshops, and it's just because, as everyone would be able to say, like, relationships are the most. I kind of feel like the most valuable thing you could have in this industry. You know, and like you said, you want to put an album out in a few days, and you had those relationships already established, and they were willing to work with you. So and it's just, it doesn't cost anything to be nice, man.
Yeah,
that's true.
You know?
That's what I'd say as well, because I empathize. Like, I am the biggest closeted introvert. Like, I can talk to people, I do this, but all I want to do is sit inside and write music. Like, no part of me wants to go and build relationships. Like, I totally empathize, but I think it's just coming from, like, a really genuine place. Like, just make the music you want to make, and it's gonna attract the people who get it, and then you have like a common ground. So
Yeah.
I think it's just trying to find common ground with people. Like, it's not like going to an event thinking like, how many people's numbers can I get right now? It's like, you know, like, how many people can I genuinely have a conversation with? You know, like, because that's building a relationship in music is no different to building a relationship out of music. You know, it's just treating people like human beings and caring as well, like actually listening to what people say. You know, like, so many people have their spiel, they're ready to talk, but it's like, actively listen. Like, you know, sometimes the most powerful thing to say is nothing. Like, you just listen. Like, building a relationship is a two-way street.
Fully. Yes.
We're at the final 10-minute mark, so time for a few more questions. I'll direct this one to you guys, Ziggy and Hal. My experience of the music industry from day one has been pretty much like mostly white-facing. And the more I'm expanding beyond my most like immediate industry circles, which is amazing, the more I'm realizing that there are more people in the industry who look like me. How do we go about fortifying those connections?
The connection between...
I mean, like, people of color
Yeah.
in the industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, man, it's a hot topic, isn't it? Like, diversity, you know, and, you know, there's been a video floating around about certain people, you know, of cultural background may not have the experience, so they're taking the job of someone that may be white that has the experience, and you know, and I just think it's kind of a backwards attitude to have, you know. Sure, they may not have the experience, but all they need is a shot, you know. And me myself and the label, it's always about representation, you know. So you can't beat it if you can't see it, and I think, you know, me growing up as a Pacific Islander in the '80s, all I would see on TV are like footy players, and even seeing that on TV was like, oh wow, this is a Pacific Islander playing there, or it could, you know, maybe on the news or something. But it's a big thing for me to have representation, because I didn't have much growing up, so I know what it's like to have people in these certain positions of influence or power, how important that is, and then kind of opening the doors and letting others come through, and like you were saying, like just having a seat at a table, or just even having our own table. You know what I mean? It's really important, especially how, you know, how the face of I mean, what is the face of Australia nowadays besides, you know, our Indigenous brothers and sisters? Like, you know, you can walk anywhere in Australia, it doesn't look like what's on TV. You know what I mean? And it's important to have representation in these spaces and having voices, and and I think it just makes the next generation feel like, you know what, I can do this. You know, I can see Ziggy, I see how they're doing their thing. You know, I can do it, and then they take what we've learned and experienced, and then take it even further, pay it forward for the next generations.
Yeah, 100%. We were chatting about this before. Like, for me as an artist now, like my focus is on building, because like I've gone through my own trials and tribulations of trying to carve out a space in this industry, and I don't want artists coming up now to have to go through that. So for me, it's like, as an industry, obviously we can say it's not good enough, but we also now have to present strategies that we can build. So it's all good and well to dismantle, but what are we going to build? And for me, I think it's about empowering people of color to build things, right? Let's, like you said, like, let's build our own tables. Like,
giving them the confidence.
Exactly, because, you know, 5 years ago when I had this album, of course the label execs didn't understand it, because they're not me, they're not us, they can't understand it. So, you know, like, whereas if I was a label exec, for example, I understand the trauma. Like, I hear the music and I get it. Like, you don't have to, no press release, no nothing. Like, I press the music and I understand it. So I think for me, moving forward, it's really about building. Like, we have to build, whether that's Indigenous labels, like people of color, like within publishing entities. Like, we need people of power. Like, we need people in those positions. And obviously it's a long game, because, you know, like, this is 230 years of narrative that we've been upholding, and we have to get to the root of the issue, because otherwise, if we don't build an understanding, the forces of oppression are just going to manifest in different masks, you know, like it's just going to be shifting continually. So it's much further reaching than just what's happening in our industry, but you know, Indigenous consultation, voices of colours, like consultation, having seats at the table, like we're smart. Like if we're this excellent, this beautiful, this resilient, when we haven't had a fair shot, like imagine if you give us an opportunity, like a fair go, like we can build this, like we can steer this, we have the voices to do it. So it's just about showing up now. Like it's actually let us hold you accountable, because like there are people who can do this. So I think it's really just showing up on that.
Yeah.
We're in the final few minutes of the live stream, so we'll do a quick shout-out round across the line. Who have you been noticing, apart from yourselves, that's doing standout kind of work highlighting local music or elevating local music? Should we start with Amelia?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples. One that immediately comes to mind is this really cool new website that's just launched called WHIP, or WHIP Project, which is like a website for female and gender non-conforming people to, generally speaking, within the electronic music sphere, but I think it's going to extend past that. And it's a really easy way for you to upload your profile, like about who you are, like what part of the industry you work in, like you DJ, promoter, producer, that kind of thing. And you can upload it, and now it's like this huge living resource that people within the industry can go to when they're like, oh, there's not enough women to book, there's not enough women of colour to book, there's not enough XYZ, and it's like, we're literally handing it to you on a here it is, and you go forth. Yeah. So I think that's been a really cool project to see evolve, and that came out of isolation, like people having a bit more time to do stuff. So that's been really cool. That was made by two DJs in Melbourne, DJ Sarah and Floss, so that was been really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Aniela?
She stole mine.
Oh!
As you were talking, I was like, oh my god. Sorry. Come back to me at the end.
Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah.
How about you, Hal?
I think, it's like saying shout out to Patrina Convey, who works at Sony, and I've known her for many years, you know, starting her own PR company and then moving into the Sony building, and then her starting to open the doors, you know, like brought me in, brought Mo in, Sam as well, and just really trying to introduce diversity into what we have known to be a white industry in Australia for many years. And, you know, and just seeing her go into bat for a lot of people, and, you know, and even just fighting her own battles as a woman in a male-dominated kind of industry and workspace, you know, and infiltrating the boys' club, and then bringing in people of color, and for me, that's like, you know, I feel that she doesn't get the props, you know, that she deserves, you know, because she's not the kind of look what I did, and that, you know, but, you know, people like myself that, you know, love to show our gratitude for, you know, for people, you know, we talk about allies, you know, like she's one hell of an ally, you know, to have, and you know, she's done great work and continues to do great work, and I just always want to kind of mention her whenever I feel like, when I talk about my success, you know, a lot of it is due to her, and whenever I talk about it too, it's like, you know, a true power is being able to empower others, you know, you kind of mentioned that before, you know, and teaching other people, you know, you can do this yourself, you know, like, that's a big thing for me.
How about you, Ziggy?
Oh, thanks.
No, seriously though, I can say you.
No, don't.
Young, not young, but artist JK47 from Brisbane just had a baby. Congratulations! But just like, it just so much talent. Like you envy it. You listen to it and you're just like, wow, that's amazing. On a completely selfish personal note, Pistol Pete at Spotify, I have to give a huge shout out, because when I was trying to get this album out, like he moved heaven and earth, put me in touch with people in the New York office at TuneCore. Like, again, talking about allies, like I emailed him to scrap a song that he'd already looked at playlisting to then say, also, I'm going to put out my debut album on your platform
In a few days.
in a few days. And it was like they were working tirelessly to support me. And like, honestly, that was the most supported I've ever felt in this industry. Katie at Apple as well was amazing.
I was about to say,
Yeah.
Kate, yeah, she is a absolute star.
Yeah.
She. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You go.
No, but
yeah.
that, like, and that's, I think, the thing of like different avenues, you know, like
Yeah, exactly.
both Katie and Pete, when I reached out to them and said, look, I'm scrapping this song and I'm putting out this album because it's really important to me as an artist. Like, this is how I need to use my voice right now.
Yeah.
They got that,
Yeah.
and they did everything they could to help me get it out. And it was literally like, as an independent artist, to be able to have that kind of turnaround, and then not only that turnaround, like them actually follow through with support, you know, like April 25th is a song on my album which is pretty confronting. It's very unapologetic, and for that to be like 4th in New Music Friday, for that to be, you know, like getting plugged with Apple Music, like that's like showing up, like, and that's, you know, I have to thank them so much, because as an independent artist, like building those relationships and having people actually show up for you it's everything. It's literally everything.
Katie's also a lot of the reason I think that in the Apple Music world anyway, that there is focus on hip hop coming out of Australia at the moment with her, in the new Australia with Briggs. It's like she really drove that because she gives a shit about it, which is cool. Can I really, I know we're running out of time, but I've got mine now. Mine was Katie, and two, that I hope it doesn't seem like I'm like sucking up to them because of my job, but people that I would never usually think to shout out, except I will now, is firstly Emma Jones, who's the editor of Purple Sneakers. She is such a darling, and honest, like from years ago when I was managing artists, I used to manage this artist called Boy, and I still do, but she was one of the first people to write like really beautiful in-depth articles about her, and continues to this day to write the best pieces. Like, we even just had a piece go up today from her with an artist called Stephen that we work with from Wollongong.
Oh, Stephen is so good.
I know, he's so
Stephen,
good.
I love him.
Yeah.
Stephen, you are. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, he's amazing. But even she spent so much time doing the interview, followed up afterwards and had sort of said, you know, like, I'm not cutting one piece of it because he just had everything he had to say, I need to include it. And I was like, you're really taking the time to like talking to people, and getting to know people.
And like online media in Australia is few and far between, so it's really nice to see platforms like that still doing their thing.
I agree.
Lots to champion from just those past 2 minutes of people championing local music. We're out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Amelia Jenner. Thank you, Aniela Swiatek. Thank you, Latukefu. And thank you, Ziggy Ramo. I've been Darren Lesaguis, and thank you for tuning into Tracks. See you next time.
That's right.